everyone. This is Professor Jamie Wright with Religion and Media, RSOC 119 summer course. So, in this brief podcast, or this brief presentation, I should say, I'm going to talk a little bit about the cultural toolkit and cultural capital, and then hopefully add some questions at the end to just really bring it home for everyone. And so, first, we're going to take a look at the cultural toolkit. This is a concept originally introduced by sociologist Ann Swidler, who teaches over at UC Berkeley. And Klinenberg talks about it and mentions it briefly within our reading about culture. And this is essentially a set of ideas, skills, styles, and habits that we learn through our cultural environment. And then we apply these tools that we learn to our everyday situations and in our everyday lives. And this is important because this in this course we are going to get to look at how both religion and media shape the self. They sort of provide us with ways of seeing the world. I mean, even think about any religion, for example, any sacred text. I mean, it's a text. That's a type of media. So religion depends upon types of media for expression. Otherwise, how else would we learn about religion? And so, media and religion are really intimately tied up with each other. And then also in general, when we think about entertainment media or news media, social media, we get a lot of our information and our ideas about the world and who we are through these various mediums or media. And so in that sense, like thinking ahead, consider the importance of the toolkit concept when studying the different conceptions of self that we're going to be doing in Module 3. And so another important concept that we're learning is this concept of cultural capital. And so this essentially is a concept initially discussed and coined by sociologist Pierre Bourdieu. And here it's education's, tastes, and cultural knowledge, and the ability to display sophistication in speech, manners, and our other everyday acts. And this is a sense of cultural capital. What does it help us do? It helps us to maintain status boundaries. It requires scarcity. So in requiring scarcity, a way to think about this is it helps create a distinction between those who have and those who have not in terms of this type of cultural capital. And this operates both at individual and social group levels. It also affects consumption, wherein consumption habits demonstrate one's cultural capital. And in fact, Klinenberg talks about this as in an example on page 132 when he talks about cultural omnivores, or basically people demonstrating their cultural capital by their wide sort of a widespread varied tastes in music. And then additionally, some things to think about when we're thinking about cultural capital, this idea of cultural capital, is that context matters. So various forms of capital are valuable only within certain cultural contexts. So, for example, a PhD in sociology may be valuable in the university environment as far as finding a job and being able to understand or use techniques to understand human behavior, both at a group, institutional, and even in microsociology at an individual level. However, if there were to be some kind of zombie apocalypse, we have to ask ourselves, how valuable would sociology be? Or going back, 1,000 years, how valuable would the skills of sociology be? And, this is, we could apply this to other things, such as, going back 1,000 years ago, what value would a computer science degree have? These kinds of things. So in our contemporary context, in both professional and educational domains, these skill sets and these degrees are capital, essentially. These are cultural capital. We can use these to make a living, so on and so forth. So context really does matter when we're talking about cultural capital. And then also, when we get a little further into the Sherry Turkle readings and we start thinking about social media as well, I mean, think about that. Even within social media environments such as Instagram or Facebook, what have you, there's certain rules, so to speak, and there's certain types of ways of demonstrating one's knowledge of that particular form of social media. And when we understand the ways in which one's self-expression through photographs or posts or what have you, when we understand how those can demonstrate a type of knowledge and a type of a cachet within, or a type of savviness within that form of social media, we can also think about that as a type of cultural capital. And then, so also, different forms of capital are interchangeable. Money or economic capital can buy education or cultural capital. Education or cultural capital can transform into a lucrative career, which could equal an economic capital. And connections, like social capital, essentially social networks, can be transformed into economic opportunities or economic capital. And also, the cultural capital can take several forms. Tastes in food, tastes in art, tastes in music, education, degrees, eating habits, clothing, style, mannerisms, so on and so forth. And so these are important things to keep in mind as we move forward and attempt to understand this environment of both religion and media. And finally, what are these concepts? Why are these concepts important to religion and media? Well, for one, this course takes a cultural approach to religion and media, and we understand media through its symbolic nature or meaning. So these concepts and tools we're learning are going to allow us a kind of conceptual framework so we can take apart, that is, analyze these relationships between religion and media. Also, religion exists in cultural forms, and our cultural toolkits contain religious tools, like values and practices. And cultural toolkits developed within cultures, or I should say, cultural toolkits are developed within cultures, and cultures as systems of symbols. Okay, so here again, that culture as a system of symbols means that symbols relate to each other in like a web of meaning. No one symbol can be isolated and still have some kind of meaning. These symbols only make sense within webs of meaning or cultures as systems of symbols. And also these symbols, it's not just like they're a web of culture where everything is equal. No, oftentimes, these symbols exist within a type of hierarchy within these systems as well, which is why you can have something like cultural capital. And then also, we interact with others and understand situations through our cultural toolkits, and keep this in mind as we study the self. And the development of self within networks of social media, especially within the Turkle reading. And then also, cultural capital helps us to understand the important implications of media consumption and expression that have real consequences on our lives, both economic and social. And finally, ask yourselves, in what ways can we apply these concepts to the Turkle reading on social media, development of self, and social networks. So with that in mind, that's it for now, and I will be talking to you soon. If you have any questions, of course, you can reach me at my email, which is on the screen.